Hi everybody, welcome back to Plum Bush Farm. Today we are going to cut up a goat. Is that a good way to say that? Yeah, it sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? So we butchered 2 goats the other day, and they were wethers. Wethers are just castrated males. And the wethers are kind of a byproduct of what we're actually doing here. The main focus on the farm, of course, is dairy goats, and milk production. What happens is we're always having kids, and most of the bucks, most of the boys are simply not something that we can use for breeding. So we either have to sell them or else we have to process them ourselves, and that's why we chose to do what we did. So the ones we processed were about the size of this guy right here, probably in the 50-pound range, I would say. Now when we did this, to be honest, I didn't know if it would feel like it was worthwhile, because you got to go to all the trouble and mess of butchering, not to mention it's not fun to have to process your own animals because you kind of get fond of them. But this is a farm and that's just reality. So we processed these 2 animals, and I was pleasantly surprised with how much meat we ended up with. So if you happen to have Nigerian dwarfs, you know that they're not very big animals. These guys were about 50 to 55 pounds, and they dressed out at about 21 to 25 pounds. After it was all said and done, I didn't weigh all the meat, but I did portion it up into packages that are worth about 1 meal for our family. And we have a family of 6 children, so we go through a fair amount of meat. When I packaged all that meat up, I came up with 15 packages. So that's about 15 meals for our family in these 2 wethers that we butchered. I didn't feel like that was too bad. All right, so this is the first wether. Okay, so I'm not a professional meat cutter, but I do cut up meat for our own family. So I've cut up a number of hogs over the years, and this is not the first time that we've cut up goat, but I don't have very much experience with it. What I intend to do is I intend to cut off the back portion and try to make a couple roasts off of the back legs. And I'm going to see if in the loin section here, I'm going to see if we can cut some steaks. We'll cut the ribs off, we'll take the shoulders off, and we'll see once if we can make a roast out of them. If we don't, anything we can't make a roast out of, we're just going to put into grinding meat. I'm going to try to keep you with us through the process here, and if that changes, I guess we'll find out. I'm going to be using a meat saw and a knife, and that's basically the only tools that we need for this. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is right in front of the back legs here, we're going to cut and separate this. There we go. I'm going to cut this flank off from the other side, right up here, and then about right down here and through. Now we're going to take the meat saw and we're going to cut through the spine to separate this back portion. Okay, now we've got the rear portion, back legs, taken off, and I'm going to work with those after a bit. But now we're going to deal with what we have in here. So I've got all this leftover fat inside, and I believe that's the kidneys in here, which we will not use. So I'll cut those off. If we wanted to render this down for some tallow, it'd probably work fine for that. I'm going to hang on to it in case if we want some extra fat for the grinding meat later on. So I'm just going to hang on to this fat and set it aside for now, maybe put it in a bowl or something for later. If this was a hog, this would be called the leaf lard. But this isn't a hog, so I don't know what to call it. Okay, the next thing I think I want to do is remove the front shoulders. And I'm not 100% sure. The best way that I know to do this is cut down in here up through the armpit. And we're just going to keep following that up to the top of the shoulder. And that cuts right off. There is no joint up there. That's just cartilage that connects the top of the shoulder to the body of the goat. Come back 1, 2, 3 ribs back, and I'm going to cut down with my knife. And then I'm going to come over here on the same rib. It's going to be this one right here. I'll come on out. A little bit of cartilage there. I might have to cut through that with the saw. I'm going to take that down. Right, take this shoulder off, same as we did the other one. So there's another front shoulder. And now I'm going to cut this center portion out. Just go right there. There's just a little something there we had to cut through. Now we're going to cut on down through. All right. That leaves us with the neck portion up front. That's the neck portion. I'm probably just going to be deboning that. And now we have the center portion of the animal here, and this is going to be our ribs and the loin. So what I want to do with this is on the back here, I'm going to cut up from the back until I get to the ribs, and I'm cutting up inside of this meat here. I don't want to run into this meat. I want to leave that on. So I'm cutting up about right here. When I get here, I'm hitting that first rib. So on the top side, I'm going to score on up a line where I want to cut. And now I'm going to take my meat saw and I'm going to cut that line if I can. And we're going to cut those ribs off. All right. And again, if this was a hog, this would be our bacon right here. These are our ribs. I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do with that. I'm going to just lay that aside. We're going to keep breaking this carcass down. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. We're going to cut up here till we get up to that first rib. And this side, I'm going to cut from the inside, from here right down to where I started my cut. I'm just doing this at my kitchen table on a butcher's block that I have made for just such a purpose. So this is the other half of the ribs, and now we're down to this section right here, which is the loin. And this would be where, if this was a beef, you'd be taking nice big steaks out of it. But this is a goat, so it's not a very large portion. We're just going to cut down through. I'm going to make them pretty nice and thick. And then we'll use our saw to cut them off. Okay, so that's a I don't know, there's not a lot in that for meat. But let's do another one. We'll go the same.
Okay.
I think he'll
It'll be fun to try to grill those and see what happens.
Yeah, I think too. This will be kind of fun. See what happens. I made them pretty thick. And that kind of is scrap.
The end of the rib. See how they're kind of flattened?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good dairy characteristic.
That's what we're looking for.
You want your ribs to be, kind of a flat shape. If they were big, stout, round ones, that would be a lot less dairy of an animal. That's what they're feeling for.
I see. Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? You can actually see it in person there.
Mm-hmm.
So that looks like a fairly flat-ribbed little animal. Which one was this?
This is the
brown one?
The brown one, yep.
Okay.
So I'm going to take the flank off here and just see what we actually have for ribs. So the ribs start about right here, and if we come up this way, they're going to come from about here. So the actual rib on this is about this much. And this is flank, which I don't know. I think if I were to try to grill this along with the rib, I think this stuff would end up getting cooked way faster because it doesn't have the bone in it. Let's look at what we got in the back portion here. So I think the thing to do is probably try to bone this out and separate these two legs from each other. I'm not very good at finding and going around the H bone, which is the bone, what this backbone is called. So I'm just going to give it a try and do the best I can. And that's probably not going to be very good. So I can see if we come up from the back here. Okay, so kind of come around that as best as I know how. Which again, I'm not very good at this. Let me turn so you can see. So I'm trying to follow this around as best I can. And I can feel right down here where my knife is that we've got this. Can you see that on the camera? Okay. We got this ball joint right here that we can get this leg to come off. So I'm just trying to do that without leaving any more meat on here than necessary. So anything I leave on here, I have to just try to bone off later. All right, so that's our hind leg portion, which I think we'll probably turn that into a roast. So let's see if we can do the same thing here on the other side. On these two hind portions, these two back legs, we're going to go ahead and divide them about right here. The meat from here forward is mostly just good for grinding. Back here's where the better meat will be. So we'll cut down in here and take the saw. Going to be a roast that we can save. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. Let's grab these front shoulders. We'll do the same with them. I'm going to see whether I think I can get enough up here for a roast. Probably trim that up a little bit. So again, up here I'm going to split it right here where the portion down here is not going to be very good as a roast. That's going to get boned out. And this would be the front shoulder, which I think we could put this, maybe this one. So there's a little gland right here on the front of the shoulder I see. And if you see the little gray looking gland like that, you're going to want to get rid of that. You don't want to have that in your meat. So there's going to be another one of those on this one up here, I'm going to have to find that and make sure we get it out. It's probably right in here. But I think if we would put both of these front shoulders into one roast, one crock pot, that'd probably be enough for our family if we had both of these, because we've got a family of 6 children plus 2 adults. Now I'm going to bone out the neck, and I'm probably just going to shut the video off for that, because this is just a lot of trying to carve off as much meat as I can from this carcass. Okay, I am working at making some grinding meat. So we've got a bowl right here that we're putting the grinding meat in. So this was the flank. I'm just cutting it into strips that will go into our grinder. We have a big old Hobart mixer that we use for making bread, and I also have a meat grinding attachment for it. I've got these pieces here that are from the front and rear legs. These sections of meat are pretty full of tendons. So we're going to grind this meat up. And on some of this, when I was doing my doing the butchering, you know, the bottom ends of these that weren't super clean necessarily. I tried to wash everything down good, but I'm not getting real close down here trying to save anything from the ends of these. More or less just kind of coming in here and getting what we can get and keeping an eye out for any stray dirt or hairs. We slaughtered these 2 goats a couple days ago, and we live in Nebraska. It's below freezing here, and we hung them in our garage where it stays right about freezing temp or a little bit warmer. So we hung them for about 2 days. We just thought that might make the meat a little bit more tender. This is the other front leg. And you know, there's just not a lot of meat on these. I would not classify myself as a professional meat cutter. I don't want to waste meat. I'm more of a amateur enthusiast. So these 2 are the 2 back portions of this animal. These 2 are the shoulder of the animal. In the center, we are saving the 2 ribs, and we're going to try smoking those at some time. And then from the center loin portion, we have these steaks. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steaks. And we have 8 people in our family, so that's enough for 1 meal for us. We have a bowl of grinding meat here, and I have some leftover fat if we decide we want to add more fat to the meat. Okay, so we have 4.5 pounds of grinding meat from this goat. Now I'm going to add the rest of the cuts onto the bowl here so we can see what our total weight is. So these are the steaks, and we're at 4.5 pounds. When I add the steaks in, that puts us to 7 pounds. So that's another 2.5 pounds of steaks. And then we have the shoulders. So we're at 7 pounds. That puts us to, so those are like 1.2, 1.25 each. And these are the back roasts from the back 2 legs. I'm going to add those in, and that's going to take us from 9.6 pounds to 13.1 pounds. And then all we have left are the 2 ribs. So when I add that in, we're going to come up with a total of 15.12 pounds of meat. So this goat live weight was approximately 45 to 50 pounds, but we did not weigh the goat. After we had slaughtered and dressed it and taken the skin off and all that, the hanging weight on the carcass was about 21.5 pounds. So we've dropped about 6 pounds from that, and all of that is the excess here, cuttings, that stuff that we cut off that we did not want to include in our grinding meat. And then we have the neck bone here, you know, some of the front ribs, and I've just deboned this as well as I can. This is the portion from the back, and then these are leg bones and so on. So that's our waste pile right here, and all told that's only about 6 pounds. But we'll take that out to the chickens, and we have cats that'll go in there. The dogs will be happy to chew everything they can get off of there, and so none of this is going to go to waste. Well, it's another day. I got my wife slaving away behind me in the kitchen.
Yeah,
and
that sounds very chauvinistic.
Yeah, we're terribly chauvinistic around here. I thought maybe you guys would be interested in seeing what we do with some of these, some of this goat meat. So, right here we've got goat ribs that we packaged up just a couple days ago. I'm going to get them out, and we're gonna throw them on the smoker and see how they come out. We'll take you along for that today. These are ribs from 2 goats. We're gonna do all 4 racks of them up. And I don't know what you season your ribs with, that's up to you, but I like a little bit of crushed black pepper, or ground black pepper in this case. We like a little bit of heat on there, so we're gonna put some red pepper flakes on them. And then for salt, we're going to usually do some garlic salt, and potentially a little bit of Lowry's too. We're kind of doubling up on the salt there, but you do it however you like, and we'll do it how we like. All right, we got a couple ways we could go about smoking these. I've got my Oklahoma Joe smoker here, and I like using it sometimes. One thing about this guy is you got to keep tending that firebox quite a lot. Another way that I have to smoke things is my big old 26-inch Weber Kettle grill. I'm going to use this today because it's a little bit easier to just set it and forget about it for, up to probably 4 hours at a time. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to get this fire going. All right, I'm going to do what's known as the snake method. And the way that works is we're going to make a snake of charcoal that goes around the outside. I'm going to go 2 rows wide and 2 rows deep. That's going to give me, in my experience, about 225 degrees pretty consistently throughout the burn. Now, if you're like me and you do not like using lighter fluid, here's a little hack for you. There's just enough paper in every bag of briquettes to light that bag of briquettes. So I always start tearing down from the top, just like this. Tear off about that much of the bag. I got my paper here. We're gonna put that underneath our chimney starter and grab a torch and get it lit up. Woo. Come on, come on. Okay, fire's getting going good, and we've got these chunks of smoking wood here. Those are chunks of apple. And I've got those, so I've got the apple wood here at what's gonna be the beginning of my fire. I'm gonna start the fire down here. Right over here, keep them up nice and close. And this fire is just gonna burn its way around that circle. I think maybe I want a little bit more heat, so I'm going to throw a couple briquettes over to this side. It just looks like I don't quite have enough there, but I could be wrong. We'll figure it out. So you don't ever want to put your meat on the grill until you have blue smoke or almost no smoke. We're down to having blue smoke. I know it might look a little bit gray on the camera, but we got good smoke here. This is what it looks like inside. All right, so here's our ribs. Got them all seasoned up, all ready to go on this grill. There we go. 1, 2, 3, and number 4. I'm keeping these perpendicular to the fire so the smoke can kind of get through, so I don't have one of them sitting here shielding that fire and getting overcooked. I don't know how long this is going to take. We've never done goat ribs before. You can see the fire is working its way around. These guys are looking really good. So we're 1 hour in. We'll check after a while again. It's been another hour, so these ribs have been on here for 2 hours. Now in that 2 hours, we've done some housework. We've had our lunch. We've had a milk customer come for a gallon of milk, and we spent about 20 minutes showing them the goats. And when I got done with that, I roasted some coffee, because that's another thing I do for the fun of it. Okay, in the meantime, this grill has done exactly what it's doing right now. It has sat there at 200 degrees. I can't really stress enough how good of a system this is. If you don't have a lot of time to watch your grill and you want to be able to do some ribs, smoke something, whatever it is. We've, in 2 hours, used probably only a third of this ring, so we're looking at probably a good 6 hours here. And these ribs are looking good. We're definitely going to want to keep them going here a little while. There's a fair amount of fat there that we're going to want to try to cook down out of them. I'm not really worried about them drying out yet. After a while, we might go ahead and put them in some tin foil. Made it another hour. And how are we looking in here? Okay, so we got our fire right up against this one. I don't really like that. Ouch, I need to move it. All right. Okay, so we're 3 hours in. We're starting to get some pretty nice color on these. Come around and look at them from over here. And the meat is starting to pull back on the bones just a little bit right in there. Definitely got a little ways to go yet. So we're gonna shut the lid. All right, folks, we have reached the 4 hour mark. And I would just like to stress again to you that I have not touched anything with the charcoal setup on this grill since we began. It is running just a little bit warmer now than it was when we checked it an hour ago. That's not a bad thing. So these guys are looking really pretty. I'm thinking, let's come around here, look at the underside of them. I'm thinking that they are looking real good. I kind of think it's time to wrap them up in some tin foil and just stick them inside. I'll probably just put them back inside the oven. That's just going to make it a little bit easier for us. Well, I got to thinking about it and realized there's no need to wrap them in tin foil when we've got a Dutch oven. So the light in here is awful. They actually look good. They don't look very good on the camera right now, but they're going into the oven. I just shot a clip of myself tasting this meat and talking about it, and I didn't have my mic turned on, so that was real useful. I'm gonna just taste a little bit more for you. I already know what I think. This meat is a little bit chewy. These ribs are really fine and flat, which, if you're a dairy person, flatness of rib is one of the things that is a big deal to the appraisers on the linear appraisal. These ribs are like super flat. I don't know if all goat ribs are like that or not, but you see those things, they are just really flat. They're wide this way, flat this way. So I don't know about that. The meat has a really good flavor. I like it. It's a tiny bit tougher than pork would be, but it's got great flavor, and it's not like tough and hard to chew at all. Because we didn't put any barbecue sauce on it, the outside is kind of dry and crusted up a little bit, which I guess it just depends which way you like your ribs. But yeah, this is good. Maybe we'll put some of the kids on camera and see what they think of it. Yeah.
Tiny little ribs.
Yeah, they are tiny ribs. Well, the best way to know whether or not they like them is whether they keep eating. Well, I'm going to stop filming now and we're going to go ahead and have our supper. Thanks for coming along. If you're worried about whether or not you can process your own Nigerian dwarfs, I'll just tell you, you can do it. Might not be the most fun thing for you, but with a little bit of practice, you can have your own food that you raised yourself, cook it yourself, just like we do. Thanks for coming along.